What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is the CEO of Saxum Public Relations, Renzi Stone. Renzi had an exciting basketball career, including playing with the team against Kobe Bryant and starting for the University of Oklahoma. He is recognized nationally for his political intelligence and public relations insight and has been honored as a top businessman under the age of 40. He has served in various volunteer capacities, including as a member of the governing board of the University of Oklahoma and on the global board of directors for YPO. I have my notepad ready, and I hope you do too.
Support and challenge must be delivered with the same dosage. If you support somebody too much, they get bored and complacent. If you give somebody too much challenge without support, they feel abandoned and alone. I can tell you, Don, that's my expectation that you have the top-rated podcast on iTunes. But if I brought the same amount of support, I would sit down with you and help you think through how to get that done.
Renzi, thanks for joining us.
It's so great to be here, Don. I appreciate you asking me to be on today.
You know, it's been fun learning your journey and understanding how a young guy growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, family of athletes, a lot of athletic challenge in your life. I read a quote where you said, there wasn't a meal served in your home where there wasn't a contest to see who could eat the most. Competitiveness for you, it's built into the DNA. I even know there was a story about an early competition with your own father. Can you tell me that story?
Well, so for many of us, our fathers truly are heroes. They're the people we wanted to be like. So the respect factor for me with my father when I was 14 years old, and he said that he could beat me in a 100-yard dash. And Don, I got to tell you, at 14, I was, one of the better athletes of all of my friends. And I was already pretty tall and recruiting letters had already started to come in a little bit. So I accepted that challenge. We went out over to the high school track. And as I was preparing, I remember it like it was yesterday, thinking to myself, he sure is confident about his own abilities here. We get out there, my mom stands on one end and my younger brother stands on the other, and they put the flag down and we run the 100 yards. And my old man still had me at 14 years old. He still had me. It was a memory that was seared into my brain.
Mostly because I'm going to guess he mentioned it more than once.
Well, he still talks about it, and he should. It was a big upset.
So that competitiveness also played out for you, basketball. It was your sport. You obviously grew, as you said, a little taller than most everybody else, but that pickup basketball lifestyle and spirit, you knew where every game was in town. Why did sports become so important to you? And what was it about that competitive opportunity that drew you to all these courts, anywhere you could find a game?
With a mother who swam at Duke and a father who played football at Tulane, and when I was 9, 10, and 11, owned a CBA basketball team in Tulsa, the Tulsa Fast Breakers. Competitiveness was the currency with how I was doing in my household. And my mother was the one who said, you should not be afraid or shameful of being different than everybody else. That wasn't a statement of arrogance. She was pointing out the obvious because I'm 6'9", I'm left-handed, and my name is Renzi. I looked different. I was physically bigger. And my father imparted on me that, hey, if you're going to do something, do it. And if you're going to do it, you probably ought to try to compete and try to come out on top. And that's kind of how the world works. So from the time I was 14 till I finished college, I always sought out older kids to play against because in every area of my life, I will rise to the level of the competition. My most frustrating experiences in business, in basketball, always came against poor competition. When the bar is low, it's a lot harder for me. Bar is high. I've failed many, many times, and I will fail many more. But the opportunity to compete for something a little bit out of reach is where I've found joy in my life, and it's what's motivated me.
Mm.
And I got to admit, finding whatever game was the best game, which was normally people older than me, that's how I developed who I am. There was always something to learn. And the only way you learn is you got to go try.
And you also need to go find people who will challenge you to be better.
Yeah.
You're not going to look for an easy game. You're going to look for the best and most competitive. You kind of want to be pushed around a little bit because it makes you better.
Yeah.
Clearly, it was working for you there at Jinx High. As a freshman, you make the varsity basketball team. That's not common in most places. And you get a chance to be coached by Joe Holliday. Joe actually went on to become an assistant to Roy Williams at Kansas. You're on the varsity basketball team. You got a great coach so good that he's going to go on and be a force in major college basketball. What are you learning at that stage? What's your great memory of that time period?
First thing I remember is that I put my own success ahead of the friendships that I had coming into high school. By the time I was done with my sophomore year of high school, all my friends had graduated or were graduating. I had really left behind everybody that was my age. So, on one hand, it was a real honor and a privilege to play up. On the other hand, I was not very interested in how it was going for the rest of my buddies from middle school. I reflect back and I regret that I was probably high on my horse and not more empathetic and interested in how my other buddies were doing. The other thing I remember very clearly is a real sense of drive, a sense to be better, a sense to fit in, a purpose of not just participating, but contributing. And those early days playing for Joe Holiday was absolutely critical in my formation of how I approached practice. Because when you're playing against older kids, especially at that age level in high school, there's a huge difference between a senior in high school and a freshman in high school. So there was a little bit of fear that, if I didn't prepare, that it might be embarrassing, and I didn't want to be embarrassed. One of the things that Roy Williams and Joe Holiday at that time in their coaching career really focused on how Dean Smith played the game of basketball with a very distinct set of rules. There was a rule for how you set screens. There was a rule for how you acknowledged the player that threw you a pass that resulted in a basket. There was a rule for how you did what was called the secondary break, which was the initial offense. There was a rule on how you treated your teammates.
Right.
Basketball is not a game of rules. It's a game of reaction. It's a game of intuition. But Roy Williams and Dean Smith and Joe Holiday put structure around it. And I feel like when I got to the University of Oklahoma, I really understood the framework, the foundation of what a real basketball player was supposed to do. And I appreciate that and always have had great affection for that time that they taught those things.
And what a great business lesson as well. We're not looking to create an organization of just a crazy number of rules, but setting frameworks and actually creating expectations. Those are things people actually are drawn to, at least the kind of people we want to surround ourselves with.
I started my company when I was 25, Don. And I remember when I was about 27 or 28, I had 6 or 7 people working with me. And I'll never forget, we were sitting around a conference room table. It was a Monday morning meeting scheduled for an hour. And I remember about an hour and 45 minutes into it, I had gotten to the third person that I was telling what to do. And then I would move to the next person, tell them what to do. one of my colleagues said, "Hey, do you want to do it or do you want me to do it?" I said, "Well, I want you to do it." "Well, get out of my way. And if you don't like it at the end, you can fire me. But I think I can get it done. I think you'll be pleased." That was a really, really great piece of feedback I received. And what I realized really quickly, with the help of a little reflection and some feedback from my colleagues, is leadership isn't telling somebody how to do something, it's giving them a framework, it's giving them guardrails, it's giving them a set of expectations that allow them to be who they are. And then it's allowing you to recognize that the way you do it may not be the best way to get it done. And you have to be tolerant that something may not happen exactly the way that you think it should.
You know what? That says a lot for your openness, but also for the strength of that colleague to actually be willing to say those words. There are a lot of folks that may think it, may complain about it at the water cooler, but would never say the words to you.
We talk a lot about in my company, 1,000 small conversations beats one big conversation every day. So what we tend to try to do in professional settings is we set that meeting for 1:30 on Tuesday afternoon, and that's when Don and I are going to connect, and I'm going to tell Don what I think. That's a formal interaction. But what I've learned over the years is that I am way more effective if I have informal conversations more frequently.
Wow.
Shooting Don a text in the morning, in the afternoon when I saw an email I didn't like, instead of just hitting reply, I just called Don up and we talked for a couple minutes. Informal, frequent conversations beat formal one-time conversations every day of the week.
That's an enormous takeaway. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love that because I can't agree more wholeheartedly, but also with the idea that there's just so much to be gained when trust is built over a lot of those little micro conversations too. I love that. That's really cool. When I was looking and reading about this one really caught my attention. Your Jinx squad defeated Kobe Bryant's high school team, Lower Merion, during a tournament called the Beach Ball Classic in South Carolina. Now, it would actually be the last time Kobe Bryant's team would lose in high school. And that team went on, had an amazing number of wins and a state championship. What do you remember most about that tournament, that game, and getting a chance to get that close and see Kobe Bryant, the young buck that he was then?
Well, first of all, the Beach Ball Classic was comprised of the teams of the top high school players in the United States that year. Big, big deal. Multiple players from multiple schools went on to play in the NBA. And somehow, Little Jinx High School with Renzi Stone on it got selected to play in this tournament, which, as you can imagine, the tournament was built around the best high school players team.
Right.
Don, I didn't play. I didn't play. I got hurt right before the tournament.
Yeah.
That was a huge problem for the tournament. They were upset when they found out that I wouldn't be playing. That's what the whole thing was built on. Now, out of all these exceptional athletes, Kobe Bryant was absolutely head and shoulders better than everybody else. He was the show. Multiple NBA players, Jermaine O'Neal played in this tournament, Mike Bibby played in this tournament. Nobody held a candle to Kobe Bryant. And what I remember is my younger brother, Grant, had 21 points guarding Kobe Bryant. And anytime he and I get into a scuffle about who was the better basketball player, he always reminds me, "Did you score 21 points against Kobe?" I didn't have much to respond to that.
Wow.
Yeah, so Kobe was just an alpha. He carried himself like Kobe Bryant would carry himself. I've spent a little time around Michael Jordan. I've observed a lot of great basketball players. The best carry themselves a certain way, and Kobe carried himself that way. I ran into Kobe about 5 or 6 years ago. So I walked up to him and I said, "Kobe, Jenks High School, Beach Ball Classic." And he looked at me and he just got the biggest grin on his face. And he said, "Yeah, I don't want to talk about that." I said, "Well, I was on that team." And he was so gracious, so friendly. And we talked for, 5 minutes. And his death was such a loss. Somebody I think will really stand tall when we think back on people we admire for how he approached sport. And the real blessing of his death was how many people got to see what a great father he was to his children.
Yeah, it really the challenge of trying to think back and go, gosh, how do you reframe your opinion or your thoughts about someone and maybe what they brought to the court because that was the part of life he did leave publicly, that fire that he brought there. But then to see the tenderness that was shared with so many about his love of his children, really, really impactful. It will have a long lasting impression on many of us. Looking back, you've played for a number of different coaches over the years. We've already had a chance to discuss briefly Coach Holiday. When you look at the different leadership styles of the people who you had the chance to learn from, to work under, play under, are there a couple of different traits you saw that you would share that ultimately played into the development of Renzi, the leader himself?
I'll talk about somebody I had lunch with today, Sherry Cole, longtime coach of the University of Oklahoma women's basketball team, 3 Final Fours, incredible career. But Sherry and I shared the distinction that we started OU at the same time. Her first year as a coach was my freshman year. Sherry was 30 years old when she became the coach at OU. And after she coached her team every day, she would sit in the stands with a legal pad and take notes watching my coach, Kelvin Sampson, coach the men's team day after day. And one of the things Sherry talks about is how important those years were in forming who she was as a coach, what her style was, what her way of relating to players. And we were just talking about the relationships. Coach Kelvin taught me more than anything to overcome adversity, who just finished up another terrific year at Houston. People probably don't remember that Houston program was just horrible.
Horrible.
There's no other way to describe it, Don.
Right.
Really bad. And not just bad for a couple of years, bad for 20.
Yeah.
So the one lesson that I apply every day to every single thing I do is, how do you overcome adversity? And you have to train for it. It's not something that just happens.
Yeah.
So every year in the fall, on Thursday mornings, Kelvin would have us run the mile, 8 weeks. On week one, you would set your baseline time. So, Don, if you challenged me to go run a mile and told me I had to run it every week for 8 weeks, on week one, I wouldn't run it slow, but I would give myself room for improvement. Kelvin made it an imperative for us to run that mile like it was our last mile we would ever run. And he somehow convinced me to do that all 8 weeks. Some of it was fear. Hey, if you don't do it, you're going to have to come back and do it again tomorrow. Some of it was calling up our ambition. Hey, if you want to go where we want to go, to the tournament, to the Sweet 16, to the Final Four, this is what those teams do. Some of it was individual. Hey, if you want to beat that guy who you're competing against on our team, you got to run this mile faster than him. It was a masterclass in overcoming adversity. And when you look at the transfer portal, which is ravaging college sports right now, I'm almost positive that not having the option to quit, not having the option to just say, hey, I'm going to go find somewhere else to do this, those lessons are really hard. And Kelvin used to say something about transfers. Same guy, different address.
Yeah.
Same guy, new mailing address. When you're about to change jobs, when you're about to change spouses, when you're about to change colleges, it's pretty sobering to remember that you are you. So I learned how to overcome adversity. And, in my role as a governing board member of the Board of Regents at OU, I got a front row seat watching Lon Kruger. He was the coach at the university for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Lon Kruger, I didn't play for, but it couldn't be more different than Kelvin Sampson. I would have told you before, Lon, there's no other way to really get to the promised land except the way Kelvin did it. Lon did it completely opposite. There's nothing they do the same way. But Lon's way sure does work. It's pretty good. So I learned you got to be tolerant of other people's ideas and other people's perspectives.
Wow. What a powerful lesson to learn, especially from the sidelines like that, to watch it, know what it meant to be the player in that environment and to watch a coach live it out. In the 1999 NCAA tournament, you beat UNC Charlotte. And after that game, you're on the way to the Sweet 16. Coach Sampson said, that win doesn't happen without Renzi. Tell me about that moment.
Kelvin used to love to say to the team, there's no I in Renzi. I do remember being full of joy because we hadn't been able to get over the hump and advance to the second weekend. I felt purpose in my role. I felt like my role was really, really important to us winning. I started 2/3 of the games I played, averaged a half a dozen points and a half a dozen rebounds. I had ambition to be our leading scorer. I had ambition to be our leading rebounder. But what I realized, A, that wasn't my role. But B, I had lots of joy and satisfaction in playing the role that I played. And I felt an incredible sense of accomplishment when we accomplished our goals together. There's only one ball. There are only so many points that are going to be scored. And that's what Kelvin was saying. The things I brought to that team were way more important. I don't remember how many points I scored in that game, but my guess is, well, not my guess. I was not the leading scorer. And so I contributed something that was meaningful to him and that team, and something I remember fondly.
Meaningful, even though they might not have been statistical. The other thing I read was that as he came into the locker room, you doused him with 2 cans of Pepsi.
I don't remember that actually, Don, but Kelvin did like Pepsi. So there's a chance.
Ah,
Kelvin's a pretty formal guy on the outside and a pretty informal guy for the inside people. And so that sounds like something I would have done.
so I absolutely love this quote from you. Basketball was the best and hardest class I attended because it taught me how to get along with others, to sacrifice my personal goals for the goals of the team, and to dig deeper. Can you share a moment when the value you learned in that class really became evident to you?
Well, so there was one day we were running wind sprints. There was something called a shuttle run where you go to the free throw line and back and full court and back. You have to go 6 times and you have to do it in a minute and 3 seconds. A minute and 3 seconds for me, I had to run it really fast to get a minute and 3 seconds. There was consequences for not making it. So this particular day, we were running it, and on the last line, so the sixth length, I missed the baseline by about an inch. I turned around. Coach blows the whistle, says, start it over. Renzi didn't touch the line. We did it again. I was not happy. It felt very unfair. And to kind of test it, I did the same thing on the next sprint. I missed the baseline. This is 55 seconds into the run. Blew the whistle. Renzi missed the line. I was really angry about it because I had justified to myself that I'm bigger than some of these other kids. I'm not as fast as some of these other kids. And it's only an inch. It's only an inch. So I was a victim at first. They called me out in front of everybody. They made me do it again. They knew I was not as fast as everybody. I was a victim. And after I got over myself and started reflecting back on it, I realized it's really important to touch the line in anything that you do.
Ah,
It was only until I owned what I could control that I realized the lesson. That lesson that I learned from basketball, the best class I took at the University of Oklahoma, was the importance of doing that. And I think it's carried over very nicely into the rest of my life.
really important to touch the line. Wow, that's awesome. It takes being in that moment and it takes having had that experience in order for you to fully appreciate what you can take from that, which is it's important that you carry through, not just for you, but for all the others who are having to run it at the same time.
It's really easy to miss the line in all the things that we do. And most of the time, the truth is, we're the only one that knows it when it happens.
Yeah.
We all have things we have to do, things we want to do, and things we need to do. I think an example in our business is, so I'm in professional services. You can get away sometimes just being good. But one of the habits I've gotten into over the years is when something is complete, that I've worked on, and I say it's complete. This is done. I've then stopped myself and said, okay, how can it be better? That's touching the line, because I can stop just short and it's going to be fine. Nobody's going to know. Client's not going to know. My colleague's not going to know. But if you just ask yourself, how can this be better? What is excellent? Can I make it a little bit better? That extra effort for 1 inch is almost nothing. It's no extra effort. It is minuscule. It's the justification of the behavior that's the problem.
How can this be better? Stopping, asking yourself the question, wow, that is touching the line. That is executing at a level higher than most who would be happy just to be 1 inch short.
It's easy to skip the line in life. It's easy not to touch it.
But you took the time to reflect and at the end to actually ask yourself that question. That's not a habit that everybody falls into as well.
Yeah.
You graduate from Oklahoma and you get a chance. You go to DC to work for an Oklahoma legend, JC Watts, and then you come back to Norman, reconnect Sooner basketball through Learfield Communications, and you do broadcasting, some broadcast work, but you also are involved in marketing. But I want to know, what did you learn about the game, your time in the game, sitting in that broadcast booth? What was the education for you now trying to articulate to others what you were watching going on the court?
I learned that I loved playing basketball and I enjoyed the broadcasting, but I realized that I was not cut out to talk and live basketball 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I learned in broadcasting to be Jay Billis, to be Seth Davis. It's your life. It has to be something you wake up and you go to sleep thinking about. And I had other interests that were beyond athletics. And I also learned that I love being on the court, not necessarily talking about the game. Now, all that said, I think I probably could have made a deeper career. I probably broadcast in my life 60 games and I was pretty good at it. I liked it. I got a lot of benefit out of it in my career in media and marketing. It was certainly a great training ground of being on air talent. And I had a much deeper level of respect for how these games come together. And I can tell you, if you think that the talent is the one making it all happen, you're sorely mistaken. Whether you're watching the Masters or the Final Four, that production team who numbers in the dozens are the ones that make it happen. The talent is just there to do the easy stuff.
You're just a pretty face. That's all you are.
That's exactly right. And that I had no appreciation for that going into it. I developed a much healthier regard for people that are behind the scenes making that stuff happen.
You then have this kind of little inflection moment. I know you came from a family of marketing mindsets, but you happen to also be that marketer who loved numbers, which gives you some opportunities to grow into some new spaces and ultimately to start Saxum Strategic Communications. Now, tell me about that piece and that part of your journey and what your time in athletics maybe had taught you.
When you have nothing to lose, it doesn't seem like a big risk. Starting a marketing and communication agency is really, really easy, Don. All you have to do is say, we're open. Like anybody that wants to come get my advice, the doors are open and I'm willing to take it. Now, playing basketball at the University of Oklahoma got me one return phone call from every single person that I called. I called the governor. The governor called me back. I called the CEO of the largest company in Oklahoma City. The CEO called me back himself. So the barrier to access to starting my own company was very low, very low. Now, what I learned very quickly is that there was no second call unless there was value created.
Wow.
Value creation is similar to touching the line. If you don't do it, the whole thing doesn't work. And we now have 45 people in 12 states and about 75 clients. But I tell our team here all the time, the only people who send us checks are our clients.
Right.
That's it. I keep looking for a check from somebody else, but the only ones that show up are from the people who have hired us. And if you don't create value, they fire you. They literally just stop sending the check. And I hated that. I didn't want that to happen. So in order for the check to keep coming, you have to create value. When I started the company when I was 25, that was what I focused on. And I didn't have any idea what I was doing, but I was a hard worker. I was the most prepared of any person in any meeting I went into. I was more prepared. So preparation, I learned that from basketball, that you don't just show up, you have to have done the work ahead of time. So there was a healthy amount of fear and preparation that went into how we did things. And I've been able to grow on that over the years.
Sounds like you've also been able to partner with some really great teammates, employees that would work with you who both spoke truth to you when you needed it, but also helped deliver on that commitment to growth and value to the client.
You picked up on something really important. I do call them teammates. The team did it. Sometimes the CEO gets the credit. Sometimes somebody that did all the work does not get the credit. But the team is the one that makes anything happen in any endeavor in any part of your life. It's rarely one person's effort, rarely.
Right.
The people that I work with, I have a formula, and most of them are highly driven, diverse, creative, unique people who are brave in that they have the courage to speak up when they see something. We force them to be creative and original. We want to have fun. We try not to make it so serious that people lose sleep over what we do. And we always say you have to act with the right amount of urgency. And urgency to us is that you have to be able to do today what needs to be done today. You really can't wait till tomorrow to do what needs to be done today. And so I've built a team of people that are similar minded, lots of different perspectives, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ways about going about it. But that's the common glue, core values and people that you enjoy being around, that you want to have a relationship with.
You use the word teammates. A lot of people, especially in the corporate world, as you know, bandy around that phrase, right? Oh, it's my team and I. But the truth is, they're not a team. They're a bunch of independent contractors, if you will, each seeking their own personal satisfaction, maybe carrying the same business card. Doesn't make them a team. When you're trying to take a collection of people and advance them into that stage where they are truly a team, what are some things you would advise another leader to be looking at? How do you take that group of people and bond them?
That's a great question. Two things come to mind. The first is imitate before you innovate. So when we're trying to teach a member of our team what it takes to be successful here, we encourage them to imitate before they innovate. If you innovate first, you probably are not taking into account something that at least works partially well. The second thing we do to build teamwork is we talk about support and challenge. Support and challenge must be delivered with the same dosage. If you support somebody too much and don't give them enough challenge, they get bored and complacent. If you give somebody too much challenge without support, they feel abandoned and alone. There's a huge emphasis here at my company about support and challenge. I can tell you, Don, that's my expectation that you have the top rated podcast on iTunes. But if I brought the same amount of support, I would sit down with you and help you think through how to get that done. Challenge without support is very lonely, very aggravating.
Right.
And if I never challenge you, if I just said, hey, whatever, it's all good, man. Just interview whoever you want. If anybody listens, that's not a lot of challenge.
I'm ready to sit down with you whenever you're ready and listen to your ideas on support. No, but that is beautiful because that idea, equal doses, and making sure that we're not overweighting one or the other and offering that support through those thousand conversations that you're talking about rather than one big one. You're constantly engaged with them. Every bit of this, I could see how you're creating the culture that's so important to who you are and what you want to constantly grow.
I'm a subscriber to Arthur Brooks, the great economist, happiness portfolio. Arthur Brooks says to be truly happy, you have to have friends, family, faith, and purposeful work. If you will seek those things out, you will be satisfied. Notice it doesn't say money, power, fame, notoriety. It doesn't talk about everybody knowing me. It doesn't talk about how much money I made. It doesn't talk about those things. So what I've found at my company is that they're not here for the money. They're not here for the title. They're here for the relationships, They're here for the purposeful work. Do you have to compensate them fairly or even more than fairly? I hope so. I hope that's what we're doing. That's what I'm trying to do. That used to be how we just thought about it. Money, title. That was the equation. Now it's about autonomy. It's about career growth and career path. It's about helping people have balance in their lives. I think it's a way better formula than just how much money do you want and what's your title.
And I can understand why others would want to throw their hat in with you and enjoy the journey. It's been an amazing window of time here to learn from you. It's been awesome to scribble down pages and pages of notes. I'm now going to commit myself to thousands of mini conversations and fewer longer ones. I am grateful to you, grateful that you would share your time with us today, and most grateful that you are the definition of a corporate competitor.
Don, thank you for the time. I am equally grateful to have the opportunity to share my story. Thank you very much.
I loved Renzi's story about touching the baseline during his basketball drills. What a great lesson about the importance of not taking shortcuts. Now, I know your corporate team is not running sprints at the office, but I encourage you to share this story with your team so that they can touch the line in everything they do. Looking for another episode with great basketball to business analogies? Check out episode 39 with Brandon Landry, founder of Walk On Sports Bistro and Drew Brees' business partner. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.